Captain Elena Cortez moved through the orbital shipyard's zero-gravity corridor, her magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal flooring. Through the reinforced viewport, Earth gleamed blue and fragile against the void. 12 ships, that's all humanity had to stand against an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. Captain, final calibrations are complete on the Dauntless, Lieutenant Commander Shurish reported, floating up beside her with a data tablet. All tremor drives are operating within theoretical parameters. Theoretical being the operative word, Cortez murmured. No one had ever deployed this technology in actual combat. The simulations looked promising, but simulations couldn't account for the variables of real space warfare. The alert came without warning, a sharp, pulsing tone that caused everyone in the corridor to freeze. Cortez's comm unit projected a holographic display showing the outer defense posts going dark one after another. They're already past Neptune, Shurish whispered. They're not even slowing down to secure territories. Cortez's orders arrived moments later, direct from Admiral Wells himself. His weathered face appeared grim in the holographic projection. Captain Cortez, the evacuation transports need 8 hours to clear Earth's atmosphere with essential personnel and genetic archives. You're to engage the Centauri fleet and delay them by any means necessary. With 12 ships, sir. The question escaped before she could maintain proper protocol. Wells' expression didn't change. The tremor technology is our only advantage. Use it well. The transmission ended. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vex Toral studied the tactical display with all 6 eyes. The human defenses were laughably primitive. A scattering of automated platforms with kinetic weapons and rudimentary energy shielding. Preliminary scans complete, Admiral, the sensor officer reported. The human fleet consists of 12 vessels, averaging 300 meters in length. Their weapon signatures suggest standard fusion-based systems, nothing that could penetrate our outer shielding. Vex Toral's tentacles twitched with irritation. There must be more. No species would stand against us with such a paltry defense. Perhaps they are simply ignorant of our capabilities, his second-in-command suggested. Many pre-galactic species overestimate their technological advancement. No. Vex Toral moved closer to the display, focusing on the human flagship. Their comm traffic shows they understand exactly what they face, yet they position for combat rather than surrender. One tentacle traced the unusual formation the human ships had adopted. What are they planning? The science officer approached cautiously. Admiral, we've detected unusual energy readings from the human vessels. They appear to be generating some form of spatial distortion around their fleet. A primitive cloaking attempt? Vex Toral asked. Unlikely. The signature doesn't match any known cloaking technology. It's more like... The science officer hesitated. It resembles dimensional research the Imperial Science Academy abandoned 3 centuries ago. Research into manipulating the fundamental constants of spacetime itself. Vex Toral's skin flushed with disbelief. Impossible. Those theories were deemed too dangerous to pursue. The risks of catastrophic dimensional collapse were too great. Nevertheless, the science officer insisted, the energy signatures share a 78% correlation with those theoretical models. On the bridge of the UES Dauntless, Cortez trapped herself into the command chair as the final preparations completed. The ship hummed beneath her, the experimental tremor drive sending subtle vibrations through the hull. All ships report ready, Captain, Lieutenant Park announced from Tactical. Cortez took a deep breath, keenly aware of the billions of lives depending on her next orders. The Imperial Armada approached like an oncoming storm, thousands of ships blotting out the stars. Initiate Tremor Protocol Alpha, she commanded. Let's show these conquerors something they've never seen before. The Centauri warships moved with predatory grace, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive purple-black alloy mined from conquered worlds. The first wave, 50 destroyers arranged in the Empire's famous Spear Point formation, accelerated toward the human fleet. Energy signatures indicating weapons charging, Lieutenant Park reported, her voice steady despite the odds they faced. "All ships, initiate tremor sequence on my mark," Cortez ordered. "Remember your training. 3-second bursts only, then reposition." The Dauntless's weapons officer, a young ensign named Chen, looked up from his console. "Captain, the lead Centauri vessels are broadcasting something. I think they want us to hear it." "Put it through," Cortez said. A harsh, multi-tone voice filled the bridge, the Centauri language processed through their translation matrix. "Attention, primitive human vessels. This is Admiral Vex Toral of the 9th Imperial Armada. Your resistance is noted and will be referenced in historical records. Surrender now, and your population will be permitted standard protectorate status." Cortez exchanged glances with her executive officer, Commander Rodriguez. "Standard protectorate status. Forced labor camps and resource extraction until the planet's uninhabitable," Rodriguez replied grimly. Cortez activated the comm system. "Admiral Vex Toral, this is Captain Elena Cortez of Earth Defense Force. We respectfully decline your offer and propose an alternative. Turn your fleet around, and you get to keep it." Silence filled the channel for several seconds before the Admiral responded. "Your species' humor will be studied by Imperial xenobiologists. It will be the only notable contribution humans make to galactic civilization." The first salvo from the Centauri fleet erupted, streams of coherent energy that could vaporize a pre-space age city in seconds. "Now," Cortez shouted. 12 human ships simultaneously activated their tremor drives. The fabric of space between the fleets distorted visibly, light bending around invisible currents. The Centauri energy weapons entered this distorted space and twisted like snakes in water, their trajectories warping unpredictably. Every shot missed. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, alarms blared as sensors struggled to make sense of what they were detecting. "Impossible," the tactical officer cried. "The targeting systems show 100% accuracy, yet nothing connected." Vex Toral leaned forward, all 6 eyes widening. "What am I seeing?" The science officer's claws clicked frantically across his console. "They've created a localized field where space itself is fluid. Our weapons aren't missing. Space is moving around them." "Launch interceptors," Vex Toral ordered. "Let's see if physical vessels fare better than energy weapons." 300 Centauri fighter craft streamed from carrier ships, their pilots among the elite of the Imperial forces. They entered the distortion field at maximum speed and stopped dead, hanging motionless in space. "What's happening to my ships?" Vex Toral demanded. "The field is affecting temporal flow," the science officer replied, voice quivering. "Inside that distortion, time has nearly stopped. For those pilots, a single second could stretch to years." Cortez watched the interceptors freeze in space, but her triumph was short-lived. Warning lights flashed across the Dauntless's bridge as the ship shuddered violently. "Tremor drive reaching critical instability," the engineering officer reported. "Field integrity failing on ships 3, 7, and 9. The executive officer's face paled. "If those drives collapse while active, all ships, emergency shutdown sequence," Cortez ordered. "Regroup at coordinates Delta 6. As the human fleet disengaged their drives, the frozen Centauri fighters remained suspended in space, a monument to an impossible technology. Admiral Vex Toral's skin darkened with the Centauri equivalent of a cold sweat. "They can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe," he said quietly. "And they're just learning how." The Dauntless limped to the rendezvous point, structural integrity alarms wailing throughout the vessel. Cortez studied the damage reports with growing concern. Hairline fractures spreading across the hull, quantum fluctuations in the engine core, and worst of all, microfractures in the tremor drive's primary containment field. "Status of the fleet?" she asked, eyes not leaving the scrolling data. 9 ships operational, Captain," Rodriguez replied. "We lost the horizon when their tremor drive destabilized. The Shanghai and Kilimanjaro are reporting critical damage to their drive systems." On the main view screen, The Imperial Armada regrouped, their formation shifting into a new pattern Cortez hadn't seen before. The frozen interceptors still hung motionless in space, eerie monuments to the battle's first phase. "They're adapting," Cortez murmured, splitting into smaller autonomous units. Lieutenant Park nodded grimly. Classic response to an area effect weapon. They're minimizing how many ships could be caught in a single tremor field. "Captain," Communications Officer Levy interrupted, "incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command." Dr. James Wong's face appeared on screen, the brilliant physicist looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Captain Cortez, we've analyzed the telemetry from your first engagement. The tremor drives are experiencing quantum backwash we didn't predict in simulations. Can you fix it?" Cortez asked bluntly. "Not remotely, and not quickly," Wong replied. "But we have identified a potential alternative application. Instead of creating generalized spatial distortions, you could generate targeted resonance effects. Think of it like an earthquake that only affects specific geological formations." Rodriguez leaned closer to the screen. "In practical terms, Doctor, you can tune the tremor effects to target the specific molecular composition of Centauri technology," Wong explained. "Their hull alloys have a unique quantum signature. With the right calibration, you could affect their ships without straining your drives to create large-scale distortions." Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vextoral convened an emergency war council. Imperial protocols for encountering superior technology were clear: retreat, analyze, return with countermeasures. But retreating from pre-galactic mammals would shatter the Empire's aura of invincibility. "The human technology violates 12 fundamental laws of physics as we understand them," the science director reported, his usually immaculate uniform disheveled from hours of frantic analysis. "They've somehow weaponized dimensional bleed, the theoretical overlap between parallel realities." The weapons master, a scared veteran of 100 campaigns, clicked his mandibles in frustration. "Can we neutralize it?" "Perhaps," the science director replied. "Their technology appears unstable. The spatial distortions collapsed after brief activation. If we force them to maintain the effect for extended periods, their drives might fail catastrophically." Vextoral contemplated the tactical display. "Reconfigure the fleet for distributed engagement. All vessels to fire at random intervals, forcing continuous defensive response." On the Dauntless, Cortez implemented Wong's recalibrations as the Centauri fleet launched its second attack. This time, instead of creating massive spatial distortions, the human ships projected narrow, focused beams of gravitational disruption. The effect was immediate and startling. Where the beams struck Centauri vessels, the exotic alloys of their hulls began to resonate at the atomic level. 3 cruisers shuddered violently, their hull plating rippling like water before tearing apart. "It's working," Park exclaimed. "Their hulls are experiencing sympathetic vibration at the molecular level." But Cortez wasn't celebrating. The power fluctuations through the Dauntless had worsened, and warning indicators showed the tremor drive's containment field weakening with each targeted pulse. "We can't keep this up," Rodriguez warned quietly. "We don't need to," Cortez replied. "We just need to make them believe we can." Cortez stared at the tactical display. Time running out. The Centauri had adapted more quickly than expected, their fleet now dispersed in formations specifically designed to minimize the effect of the tremor technology. Worse, the evacuation transports needed another 3 hours to clear the system. "Status of tremor drives across the fleet?" she asked. Chief Engineer Takahashi's voice came through the comm, strained with exhaustion. "Critical instability in all units, Captain. The Shanghai's drive just went offline permanently. The others are at 60% capacity at best, with containment fields deteriorating. We've got maybe 2 more major activations before catastrophic failure." Cortez turned to her executive officer. "Time for protocol avalanche." Rodriguez paled. "Captain, that's untested. The simulation showed a 70% probability off. We're out of options, XO." Cortez cut him off, her voice gentle but firm. "Signal the fleet. Formation Omega. All remaining ships with functional drives." As the human vessels moved into a precise three-dimensional pattern, Admiral Vex Toral observed with growing suspicion. "They're concentrating their forces," he noted, "contrary to our dispersal strategy. A desperate final stand," his tactical officer suggested. "Their technology is failing. Our sensors detect severe instabilities in their drive signatures." Vex Toral wasn't convinced, or a trap. Nevertheless, Imperial doctrine was clear: press the advantage against weakened prey. All battle groups converge and eliminate. The Centauri ships moved in for the kill, thousands of vessels closing in a sphere of destruction around the remaining human fleet. Aboard the Dauntless, alarm klaxons wailed as the tremor drives of 7 ships synchronized, their quantum fields merging into a single coherent system. "Convergence at 87% and climbing," reported Lieutenant Park. "Molecular resonance targeting locked on Centauri hull compositions. Engineering reports containment fields at critical thresholds." Rodriguez added, the edge of fear in his voice barely contained. "We'll only get one shot." Cortez opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Captain Cortez. What we do now hasn't been done before. The tremor convergence will create a cascading quantum freeze effect. Models suggest it will expand beyond our control. Automated systems are set to engage emergency FTL once we trigger the effect." She paused, the weight of command heavy in her next words. "Anyone who wants to withdraw, now's the time." Not a single ship broke formation. "Centauri vessels entering optimal range," Park announced. 90 seconds to full weapons saturation." Cortez took a deep breath. "Initiate protocol avalanche." Full power. 7 tremor drives activated simultaneously, their carefully calibrated fields overlapping and amplifying each other. Unlike previous engagements, the effect wasn't immediate. It built slowly, a subtle shimmer in space that expanded outward from the human fleet. The first Centauri ship to encounter the field simply stopped, its forward momentum arrested, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Then another, and another. "By the Emperor," Vex Toral whispered as he watched the effect spread through his fleet like a wave through water. Where it passed, ships hung motionless, suspended in a moment of frozen time. The wave accelerated exponentially, the quantum effect feeding on itself. Soon hundreds, then thousands of Centauri vessels hung silent, and still, their crews trapped in a single instant of stretched time. On the Dauntless, systems failed catastrophically as the tremor drive's containment field collapsed. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red. "Avalanche effect exceeding projections," Park shouted over the alarms. "It's still expanding." "All ships, emergency jump now," Cortez ordered. 6 human vessels vanished into FTL safety. The Dauntless, its drive too damaged for faster-than-light travel, remained behind as the quantum freeze effect rebounded back toward it. "Abandon ship," Cortez commanded, even as she realized it was too late. The shimmer of absolute stillness washed over the Dauntless, and everything—light, sound, time itself— simply stopped. In the Imperial Sanctum on Centauri Prime, High Admiral Zexmal paced before the Emperor's dais, his ceremonial armor clicking with each agitated step. The chamber's obsidian walls, embedded with the preserved remains of conquered species, seemed to absorb the tension radiating from the assembled military leadership. 3,422 vessels, Zexmal announced, his voice echoing. 1/3 of our total naval strength, suspended in some form of temporal stasis. Our scientists estimate the effect could last decades, possibly centuries. Emperor Kexferal's 4 primary arms remained perfectly still, a sign of extreme displeasure among Centauri royalty. And Admiral Vex Toral. His flagship was outside the stasis field, Zexmal replied. He has assumed personal responsibility for this unprecedented setback. On a secondary viewing screen, Vex Toral knelt in his private chamber, awaiting Imperial judgment. Protocol demanded his immediate ritual suicide, yet the Emperor had delayed the order, an unusual development that sparked whispers throughout the chamber. "This human technology," the Emperor said finally. "Explain it again." The Imperial Science Director stepped forward nervously. "Majesty, the humans have weaponized dimensional research our own academy abandoned centuries ago. They've created a method to selectively alter the temporal flow rate of specific regions of space. The stasis field appears to slow molecular movement to near zero, effectively freezing matter in time." "And we cannot unfreeze our fleet?" the Emperor asked. "Not without comparable technology, Majesty. Any conventional attempt to disrupt the field might destroy the suspended vessels entirely." The Emperor's secondary eyes narrowed. "How did pre-galactic mammals achieve what our greatest minds deemed impossible?" "We're analyzing that question, Majesty. Preliminary assessment suggests a fundamentally different approach to quantum physics. Their homeworld experiences constant geological upheaval, what they call earthquakes. Their understanding of wave propagation through matter may have led them down research paths we never explored." On Earth, Dr. James Wong hadn't left his laboratory in the 3 days since the Battle of Jupiter. Holographic displays surrounded him, replaying the final moments before the Dauntless vanished into the quantum stasis field. "There," he pointed, voice hoarse from exhaustion. "That's not a destruction signature. The quantum field didn't annihilate the Dauntless. It enveloped it." General Harriman, Earth Defense Forces commanding officer, frowned. "You're saying Captain Cortez and her crew are still alive?" "In a manner of speaking," Wong replied. "They exist in a state of suspended animation, experiencing time at near zero rate. For them, perhaps a millisecond has passed since the field activated. Can we get them back?" Wong gestured to complex equations floating in the air. "Theoretically, if we can generate an inverse tremor field calibrated to the exact frequency of the original, we might be able to create a temporary corridor of normal spacetime. But we'd need to place the generator inside the stasis field itself, which we can't do because anything entering the field also freezes," Harriman finished. "Not necessarily," Wong said, bringing up a new simulation. "The tremor effect primarily affects matter with temporal mass. Light can still penetrate, albeit with significant distortion, if we could remotely activate a counter-resonance device already within the field." The alert siren interrupted their conversation. A junior officer burst into the laboratory. "Sir, we've detected a Centauri vessel approaching under diplomatic protocols. They're requesting direct communication." Harriman's brow furrowed. "Surrendering already?" "No, sir. It's not an Imperial military vessel. It identifies as belonging to something called the Enlightenment faction. The commander is requesting to speak with whoever created the tremor technology." Wong and Harriman exchanged puzzled glances. The view screen activated, revealing a Centauri face unlike the military commanders they'd seen before. This one bore distinctive scarification marks around its eyes and spoke with surprising gentleness. "I am Nex Valen, theoretical physicist and leader of the Enlightenment faction. For centuries, we have argued that the Empire abandoned too many scientific paths out of fear. Your Captain Cortez has proven us right." The Centauri's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. "We have knowledge that could help you retrieve your people from the stasis field. In exchange, we seek alliance against the Imperial hardliners." "Why would you help us?" Harriman demanded suspiciously. Nex Valen's secondary eyes blinked slowly. "Because Captain Cortez could have destroyed our people forever, but chose to freeze rather than annihilate. Such mercy deserves reciprocation, and suggests humans might make better allies than masters." The observation deck aboard the UES Prometheus offered a perfect view of the quantum stasis field, a shimmering, opalescent bubble in space, containing thousands of frozen ships, including the Dauntless. Dr. Wong adjusted the final calibrations on the modified tremor device as Nex Valen observed with all 6 eyes focused intently. Your understanding of dimensional resonance is remarkable for a species so young, the Centauri physicist commented. It took our civilization millennia to develop similar theories. Necessity drives innovation, Wang replied without looking up. We didn't have millennia. Nexvalin's secondary arms made a gesture that translated roughly as respectful acknowledgement. The device incorporates our phase-shifting technology with your tremor mechanics. In theory, it should create a narrow corridor of normalized time within the stasis field. In theory, Wang muttered. Theories had a way of failing spectacularly when dimensional physics was involved. General Harriman entered the observation deck with Commander Rodriguez, who had assumed temporary command of the human fleet after Cortez's apparent loss. The Combined Earth Enlightenment Task Force is in position, Rodriguez reported, but our long-range sensors have detected Imperial reinforcements entering the system. We have perhaps 3 hours before they arrive. Harriman's expression darkened. Will the device be ready in time? It's ready now, Wang replied, closing the access panel on the probe-like device. Whether it will work is another matter entirely. The launch sequence initiated, sending the probe slowly toward the stasis field. Everyone watched in tense silence as it approached the shimmering boundary. Impact in 5 seconds, the tactical officer announced. 4, 3, 2, 1. The probe pierced the stasis field and kept moving. It worked, Wang exclaimed, checking the telemetry. The inverse resonance field is maintaining a stable corridor. The probe continued its programmed path toward the Dauntless, trailing a tunnel of normal spacetime behind it like a thread through amber. When it reached the frozen human flagship, it attached to the hull and activated its second phase. Localized counter-resonance initiated, Wang narrated. It's creating a bubble of normal time around the Dauntless. Inside that bubble, for Captain Elena Cortez, only an instant had passed. Alarms still blared, emergency lighting still bathed the bridge in red. Then, suddenly, her comm unit activated with an external signal. Captain Cortez, this is Dr. Wang. If you can hear me, please respond. We've created a temporal corridor to extract your ship. Cortez's stunned silence lasted only a moment before training took over. Wang, what happened? No time to explain fully. Your tremor drive created a quantum stasis field that trapped you and most of the Centauri fleet. We found a way to extract you, but we need to do it now. Imperial reinforcements are inbound. Understood, Cortez replied, quickly assessing the ship's status. Most systems are offline. We'll need a tow. A tractor beam from the Prometheus locked onto the Dauntless, slowly pulling it through the narrow corridor of normal space. On the Imperial command ship approaching Jupiter, Grand Admiral Zexmal received the report with cold fury. The humans are extracting ships from the stasis field, his tactical officer reported, and they appear to be working with Enlightenment faction vessels. Zexmal's ceremonial armor clicked as he stood. The Emperor has granted special dispensation for this mission. The Planet Killer Fleet is authorized. His second-in-command's mandibles trembled. The Planet Killer Fleet. But Majesty, that weapon system has only been deployed twice in Imperial history. And now a third time, Zexmal replied. These humans have humiliated the Empire and corrupted our own kind with their heretical science. Their world will be reduced to magma as an example to all who would defy us. As the Dauntless emerged from the stasis field, Cortez found herself facing an entirely new situation, human and Centauri ships working together. Before she could process this development, the sensors officer's report cut through her confusion. Captain, long-range sensors detecting a massive Centauri fleet approaching. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before. Whatever those weapons are, they're planet killers. The medical bay of the Prometheus hummed with activity as Captain Cortez underwent rapid assessment. Neural scanners mapped her brainwave patterns, revealing anomalies that baffled the medical staff. Your consciousness experienced time differently inside the stasis field, Dr. Levine explained, studying the holographic display of Cortez's neural activity. While your body was frozen, your mind somehow continued to process information at a quantum level. I remember dreaming, Cortez said, struggling to articulate the experience. But it wasn't dreaming. I could see the quantum structure of space itself, like threads in a tapestry. Dr. Wong entered, his face grave. Captain, the Planet Killer fleet is 3 hours from weapons range. We need whatever insights you gained in the stasis field. Cortez swung her legs off the examination table. Get me to the bridge. And I need direct neural interface with a tremor drive. That's far too dangerous, Dr. Levine protested. The human brain isn't designed to. My brain isn't entirely human anymore, Cortez interrupted. Not after what I experienced in the field. Aboard the Prometheus's bridge, human and Centauri officers worked side by side, tension evident in their movements. Nex Valen and General Harriman stood before a tactical display showing the approaching Imperial Armada. The Planet Killer fleet hasn't been deployed in 700 years, Nex Valen explained. Its primary weapon creates a resonance cascade in a planet's core, triggering uncontrollable tectonic activity. They're going to use our own planet against us, Harriman realized. Earthquakes. Precisely. The cruel irony would appeal to Emperor Kexferal. Cortez entered the bridge, moving with surprising steadiness for someone who had experienced what she had. We can use that against them. All eyes turned to her. The tremor technology and their Planet Killer weapon operate on similar principles, Cortez continued. Both manipulate resonance patterns, just at different scales and frequencies. Dr. Wong looked skeptical. Even if that's true, their technology is centuries more advanced. We can't possibly counter it. We don't need to counter it, Cortez replied. We need to harmonize with it. She approached the tactical display, her movements oddly fluid, almost alien. Her fingers traced patterns across the interface that shouldn't have been possible, accessing systems and creating simulations without conventional inputs. What are you doing? Harriman demanded. Showing you what I learned in the space between moments, Cortez answered, not looking up. The display filled with complex wave patterns that seemed to shift and evolve on their own. The Planet Killer technology creates specific resonance patterns to destabilize planetary cores. If we reconfigure our remaining tremor drives to match those patterns, but with inversely phased harmonics, we could create a state of quantum entanglement. Nex Valen finished, mandibles clicking in excitement. Their systems would become linked to ours, and we could potentially take control of their own weapons, Wong added, eyes widening in understanding. The bridge of the Imperial flagship Inevitable Dominion gleamed with ceremonial perfection as Grand Admiral Zexmal prepared for humanity's destruction. The Planet Killer's primary array, a massive crystalline structure housing technology so advanced it appeared magical even to most Centauri, pulsed with growing energy. Target Earth's Pacific fault lines, Zexmal ordered. Maximum dispersal pattern. Weapons at 80% charge, Admiral, his weapons officer reported. Firing solution locked. Zexmal's primary eyes narrowed with anticipation. Let the mammals experience the true power of. Admiral, the sensor officer interrupted, voice tight with alarm. Detecting unusual energy patterns from the human trader fleet. They're generating some form of resonance field directly matched to our weapon frequencies. Impossible, Zexmal snapped. No one outside the Imperial Science Directorate even understands the principles of. His words died as the control interfaces throughout the bridge suddenly flashed and reset. The Planet Killer's targeting systems shifted without command input. We've lost control of the primary array, the weapons officer cried in panic. The targeting solutions are changing. On the Prometheus, Cortez stood with her hands pressed against a modified tremor interface, her eyes unfocused as if seeing beyond normal space. Through the neural link, she felt the Planet Killer technology as an extension of herself, alien yet somehow familiar after her time in the quantum stasis. Their systems are synchronized with ours, she reported, voice distant. I'm redirecting their weapons away from Earth." Harriman watched in astonishment as the tactical display showed the massive Imperial fleet's weapons turning against their own vessels. "By the stars," Nex Valen whispered, "she's not just redirecting them. She's reprogramming the entire Imperial command network." The space surrounding Jupiter blazed with the light of disabled Imperial vessels as Cortez maintained her connection with the entangled systems. Across the bridge, human and Centauri officers watched in silent awe as the planet killer fleet's formations disintegrated, ships powering down or drifting aimlessly as their control systems were systematically overridden. "We've achieved full-spectrum dominance," Rodriguez reported, wonder in his voice. 97% of Imperial vessels neutralized without destruction. Cortez nodded slightly, her consciousness still partially immersed in the quantum interface. "Grand Admiral Zex Mal's flagship remains operational. He's implemented manual overrides." "Should we disable it as well?" Harriman asked. "No," Cortez replied. Her eyes focused again as she gradually withdrew from the neural interface. "We need someone to deliver our message." Harriman raised an eyebrow. "And what message is that, exactly?" "An invitation," she said simply. 3 days later, in Earth's newly constructed Harmony Hall, representatives from Earth and the Centauri Enlightenment faction prepared to receive an unprecedented visitor. Emperor Kex Farrell himself, accompanied by a minimal honor guard, had requested direct negotiations after witnessing the complete neutralization of his most powerful fleet. Cortez stood at the window, watching the Centauri Imperial shuttle descend through Earth's atmosphere. The first time a Centauri emperor had ever set foot on a non-conquered world. The neural changes from her time in the stasis field had stabilized, leaving her with an intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that Earth's best scientists could barely comprehend. "Are you certain about this approach?" Dr. Wong asked, joining her at the window. "We have the technological advantage now. We could dictate terms." "That's exactly what the Empire would do," Cortez replied, "and exactly why we won't." The Emperor entered the hall with surprising humility for a being who ruled thousands of worlds. His ceremonial armor, normally adorned with trophies from conquered species, was noticeably unadorned. "Captain Alina Cortez," he began, using all 4 primary arms to form the highest gesture of respect in Centauri culture. "You have accomplished what no species has in 3,000 years of Imperial history." Cortez returned a respectful nod. "Not just me, Your Majesty. This was the work of many minds, including those of your own people." She gestured to Nex Valen and the other Enlightenment faction representatives. Indeed, the Emperor's secondary eyes focused briefly on his dissident subjects without anger. "Your capacity to ally with those who once sought your conquest is unexpected. That's the fundamental difference between our approaches," Cortez explained. "Your empire seeks to dominate. We seek to connect." She activated a holographic display showing the thousands of Centauri ships still suspended in the stasis field near Jupiter. "We've developed a method to safely extract your crews and vessels," she continued. "All can be recovered without loss of life." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in surprise. "After all we intended to do to your world, you would still return our fleet to us." "With modifications," Cortez clarified. "The tremor technology can be adapted to make large-scale invasion impossible for anyone, including us. We propose sharing this defensive capability with all spacefaring species. You would distribute such power willingly." The Emperor's tone conveyed disbelief. "Power to defend, yes. Not power to conquer." Cortez gestured to the view screen showing Earth's continents. "Our world is shaped by geological instability, like tremors that can destroy but also create. We've learned that the most resilient systems aren't rigid hierarchies, but adaptive networks." 1 month later, the first Centauri ships emerged from the stasis field, their crews experiencing only moments of subjective time despite months having passed. They returned to an empire already transforming, the Emperor having initiated reforms that incorporated elements of the Enlightenment faction's philosophy. On the observation deck of the Prometheus, Cortez watched alongside Admiral Vex Toral, who had been appointed as the Empire's liaison to Earth. "Your world remains unique in our experience," Vex Toral commented. "Most species, upon obtaining superior technology, immediately seek to dominate others. Perhaps that's why you conquered them so easily," Cortez suggested. "They were just following your example." The Admiral's secondary eyes blinked in acknowledgement. "And what will Earth's example teach the galaxy?" Cortez turned to look at the stars beyond the viewport, her quantum-enhanced mind perceiving patterns invisible to others, the first tremors of a new galactic order taking shape. "That the strongest foundations," she replied, "are built not on fear, but on harmony."